Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
Good morning, I'm Rob Woodard. This is Sunday Journal. With me today is Cape Cod author Paul Kemprecos, who, after many years, is bringing back his popular Aristotle Socarides, the main character in 7 mysteries set on Cape Cod and Nantucket. We'll be discussing the series and his work with best-selling author Clive Cussler. Good morning, Mr. Kemprecos. Thanks for joining me today.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me. Pleasure to be here.
So after so many years, you're going to bring back this, he was a rather popular character, private investigator, Socarides, in a new mystery called Gray Lady. You want to tell me a little bit about the character first?
Socarides first came into being, and I conjured him up in the late 80s, and the first 2 Sock books were published in 1991. It was Kubla and Neptune's Eye, and I did, subsequent to that, I did 4 more, and before I went on to work with Clive Cussler, and they're all pretty much set around Cape Cod. He's a Greek-American extraction. He's a former Vietnam vet, former cop. He's a fisherman and a diver, and almost all the action has been set on Cape Cod mainly, although there are side trips to New Bedford or Plymouth. Mayflower Murder, which was one of the later ones, was set in largely in Plymouth, having to do with the Pilgrims and the Indian issues.
So when you go to write one of these books, obviously you have to visit these various places. How long in preparation do you spend? How much time in preparation do you spend before you actually sit down in front of your computer or typewriter?
Well, I could say that I've been preparing for over 40 or 50 years, because I moved to Cape Cod in 1961. So and I was a newspaper man for 25 years, so I've been kind of marinated in the Cape and in the background of the Cape and the history. So the rest of it is just having to, when you come up with an idea, having to expand your area of expertise. For instance, Mayflower Murder, which I just mentioned, I went to Plymouth Plantation. I talked to actually in an earlier book, I talked to a Wampanoag Indian when I was coming up with one of the main recurring characters. Second book was set mostly around Woods Hole, had to do with underwater high tech. So I went up there. I talked to people in the field, and I don't know how it might take me. I kind of do research as I go along. I do research to see if the basic premise will hold, and then I'll do research as I go along. So there might be a month or so or several weeks of research overall, but you're always doing research as you get in areas that you don't know about.
And when you say he's a fisherman and a diver, did you have to expand your knowledge of those subjects, or are you already into that sort of thing?
I covered, for the Cape Codder, I wrote a fishing column, covered the commercial fishing scene out of Chatham for a number of years, and I got to know a lot of the guys there and their personalities and what they did and how they did it. And when I went to place Sock in a setting, I have him fishing out of a fishing port. I don't think I've ever named it in the books, but if you look at it, it's obviously the Chatham Fish Pier, and he lives in a converted boathouse overlooking Pleasant Bay, and I've always thought of that as being kind of South Orleans. There are a number of boathouses there, and I always thought that he might be on one of those. It might be part of an old estate, so that you can kind of have a general idea of where your characters are. And for the people who have gotten into the these books, they really do like the local angle.
Sure, yeah, it's fun to read about places that you've actually been.
Yeah.
So, after so many years, why did you decide to bring him back?
Well, I was thinking about that this morning. You know, the story about Sherlock Holmes and Arthur Conan Doyle, and Arthur Conan Doyle got sick of writing Sherlock Holmes, and he killed him off. He struggled with Moriarty at the Ehrenreich Falls. And then there was a public outcry, so he had to bring him back. And he did write a number of Sherlock Holmes stories after that, some of the really good ones, although they were all good. Well, with me, it wasn't that kind of an outcry, but I had gotten to the point after I finished the sixth one where it had been a lot of work to write, and I couldn't make a living at it. So I decided I wasn't going to write any more books. It was just too much trouble. I was going to find some honest work. And shortly, while I was sort of floundering around trying to figure out what to do, I got a call from Clive Cussler, who knew my work and knew the Socarides character, and had come up with a new series called the Numa Files. And the hero in that, protagonist in that, was a guy named Kurt Austin. And coincidentally, he would be living on a boathouse on the Potomac River, Lake Sauk. He was a student of philosophy. And I didn't find out until later it was that the series Austin was sold to the publisher on the basis of my Sauk character. When you're writing these things, you're always a bit insecure. It's never as good as you think it's going to be. But apparently other people thought it was very good. So I did that over 10 years. I wrote 8 books with Cussler, and they all did extremely well. And our arrangement ended after that. I think in 2011, I talked to Clive. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do next. He said, why don't you write another Sauk book? Mm-hmm. And I talked to his agent, and I said, I don't know what to do next. And he said, why don't you write an adventure book like the Numa Files? So I had been on this roll with the Numa Files, so I decided to write an adventure book. So I wrote a book called The Emerald Scepter, which came out last May, and that was similar to the Numa Files, only with a whole new set of characters. Coincidentally, the main character, Matt Clark, is a Woods Hole robotics engineer. So while I was trying to sell that book, I contacted an agent, and I worked for almost a year trying to sell that book. And in the meantime, after doing a podcast, whatever that is, in which I discussed my previous work, I talked to my wife, and I said, maybe I should do another Sauk book. People have been asking me through the years to do one, and I just didn't have the time. So I just kind of laid out a plan. I thought Nantucket would be a cool place to set something. We went over there on the ferry one day and looked around, and it's got some marvelous settings.
Right. How long does it take you to write these books? Once you set your mind to it and you say, okay, I'm going to write another Sauk book, from when you first sit down till you're turning in your final manuscript?
Initially, when I did the original ones, I was younger, I had more energy, and between 6 and 9 months for some of those original Sauk books. When I sat down to do this, after 15 years, there were some challenges. How old to make him? How much time? What's he been doing on all this time? So, after talking to some editors, I thought I would advance it 10 years into the future, and that way he would still have the physical wherewithal to have to deal with the bad guys. The technology over the past 15 years has just accelerated. So anything you write that's beyond 5 years, it seems dated.
Right.
So I took that in consideration. I want cell phones, I want computers. Back when I wrote the first one in 1991, there just wasn't a lot of the stuff that we have today. So I had to deal with reconstitute the voice, see if I could get the voice back. I had to figure out what to do with his family. What about his girlfriend? What about his cat? Everyone asked about his cat. And
what's the cat's name, just as an aside?
Kojak, of course.
Oh, something easy to pronounce for once.
Kojak.
Okay, good.
But so I made him an older cat, but still alive, and I think it works. It's kind of set in a kind of a generic time, and it took me. I'm not sure. It might have taken me 9 months.
Right.
Once I got the initial concept.
Once you get the ball rolling in your head, it just kind of flows.
Yeah, and I brought in his. As a recurring character, John Flagg, who's a Wampanoag Indian from Martha's Vineyard, and he's a CIA type. He's kind of a shadowy figure, and he floats in and out of the action. And
right.
there's great dynamics between he and the hero.
So this is this is the 7th book in the series? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a favorite one?
Well, it's kind of like your children. You always
right. I hear that. Yeah, but
you love all your children. I kind of liked. I think it was. Oh, it was Death in Deep Water. Although I don't like the title, it's set around a fictional marine theme park, which I kind of saw put in the Yarmouth near Hyannis area, and I liked it because of the theme in which the detective is asked, a killer whale has apparently killed a trainer, and there's a lot at stake, and the detective is brought in to either prove or disprove that the whale did the murder. And it introduced a character named Uncle Constantine, who's a crazy eccentric sponge diver, is Sock's uncle.
Okay.
And some of the other characters. So I did like that. But then when I started going over these again and I started reading them, I thought, geez, some of these, I really enjoyed them, even though I'd written them. So I don't know. That might be the favorite, but I don't know. I think they're really I could bounce from one to the other and say that's my favorite, depending on my mood.
Is there one that gets more feedback from readers than another? Do people come up to you and say, hey, I really loved this particular book in the series?
The last one, Gray Lady, has been getting an enthusiastic response from people I talk to. I recently did a promotion with my very first one. I put it on as a free ebook for 5 days, and it was something like 60,000 hits, and there are over 100 reviews on Amazon, and virtually all favorable. So I
Wow.
think those people like that. That was kind of my learning book, and but I don't know. I like Neptune's Eye, the second one, Death in Deep Water. Yeah, I kind of like them all. I think they all bring something different
Sure.
to the reader.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you were a newspaper man. Mm-hmm. As the longtime editor of the Cape Codder in Orleans, how did you determine that, hey, I'd like to get into writing mystery novels?
Oh, yeah. I told this story about 1 million times. The reporter who was covering the story of the Widow left. And the Widow was a pirate ship that went down in 1717 off Wellfleet, supposedly with fabulous treasure. She left, so I started covering the story. And there were 3 salvage groups fighting to get this rights to this ship. And I thought it might make an interesting nonfiction book, and I made some explorations in that direction, but didn't get anywhere. So that is kind of what launched my fiction career, because I'd never written any fiction, and I never read very many mysteries, but I had read Raymond Chandler, and I thought, what about a detective that's sort of like a Philip Marlowe, only different, bringing my own background and experience to it. And so I came up with the idea of Socarides, and he's got a family, which was different from a number of the detectives who tend to be loners, the private eyes. and that sold the publisher, I think. And so I wrote Cool Blue Tomb, and they gave me a 2-book contract, and I wrote Neptune's Eye. I didn't really have a clue what I was doing, but I was fortunate to have very good editors that helped me along.
And who published? Is it the same publisher who published your original works?
Oh gosh, I've been all over the place. That was Bantam Doubleday Dell.
Okay.
They published the first 4. Then the next 2 were published by St. Martin's Press. When I went to work with Cussler, we started off at Simon & Schuster, but then he went over to Penguin Putnam. He took me with him. And then most recently I've been with a small publisher in California, Suspense Publishing.
Okay.
They put out an online magazine called Suspense, and it's been kind of fun working with them, very closely with them, and it's kind of a whole different way of publishing. The publishing business is changing drastically.
I'm sure, like everything else.
Yeah.
What's it like working with another author? Now, do you write a certain part and he writes a certain part? I'm talking about Clive Cussler, of course. What's the collaborative arrangement there?
Well, at the time, we were among the first to do collaboration in commercial fiction. Tom Clancy had done it with another writer in the I forgot the name. It was the Op Center series as a paperback. And then Cussler decided he wanted to do it, and he asked me to do it. Generally speaking, after the first book, where we collaborated on the concept, after that I would come up with a concept, and I would run it by him, and he would say yes, no, maybe, and then I would flesh it out, do more of an outline, and then start working, and then we would meet at some time during that process, and he would advise me as to twists and turns, characters.
So are you actually physically doing the writing, and you're just sort of
I
collaborating?
did all the writing.
Okay.
I wrote all the Pneuma files. Every word of the Pneuma files is
okay.
mine.
So you're just bouncing ideas off one another.
But it was a true collaboration in that I could not have done it without his expertise and
sure.
and of course his name was what
right.
The brand name was what made it a hit.
Sure.
But I think that they were good books as well.
Right. So we just have a couple of minutes left,
Yep.
and I know that some of the listeners are going to be saying to themselves, "Geez, I really want to get into this. I would love to write stories or mysteries or whatever." What advice would you have for an aspiring writer?
Well, the main thing is just to stop talking about it to yourself and actually start to do it. And even if you have a busy schedule, try and pick a time of day when you can write. Mary Higgins Clark had a family and full-time job, and she would get up early in the morning and just kind of write. And even if you just do one sentence a day, if you do one paragraph, and try and do that as much as possible. Read a lot of other writers, see who you like, and don't copy them, but you can get inspiration from people, and then keep on doing it. And then go to the Cape Cod Writers Conference is a good thing to go to.
Right.
Put in a plug for that, and talk to other writers, and basically educate yourself as to what the field is. The field is becoming much more difficult. But there are a lot of breakthrough writers. There are always the agents, the publishers are always looking for that brand new writer that's going to rip things off.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. With me today has been Cape Cod author Paul Kemprecos, who after many years has brought back his popular Aristotle Socarides. He's the main character in 7 mysteries set on Cape Cod and Nantucket. I'm Rob Woodard. This is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.